What's up, guys? It's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Monarch deck profile. And wait a minute, we actually don't need this. This is Monarch, silly. We don't need an extra deck. So I'm really excited to do this one for you guys because this deck actually doesn't need an extra deck at all. I have some extremely spicy tech cards in this build for you guys. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. This card is an awesome boss monster for the deck that has the ability to contribute summon this card by tributing 1 tribute summoned monster. And if this card is tribute summoned, you can send 2 Monarch spells or traps with different names from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, shuffle 1 card from your opponent's hand at random, graveyard, or their side of the field into the deck, which is a really good effect just to deal with cards on the field while also foolish barreling some really powerful Monarch spells or traps to your graveyard. It also has the ability once per turn during either player's main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can discard a Monarch spell or trap and then target 1 monster in your graveyard with 2400 or more attack and 1000 defense and add it to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Aether, the Heavenly Monarch. This card is a great card to put on your side of the field because it has the ability, just like your copy of Erebus, that you can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 tribute summon monster. And if this card is tribute summoned, you can send 2 Monarch spells or traps with different names from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon out 1 monster with 2400 or more attack and 1000 defense from your deck, but return it to the hand during the end phase, which is a really good effect to essentially search one of your Monarch monsters and put it on your side of the field instantly and then bounce it back to your hand so you can use it later. It's a super cool effect to be able to use with this card, and it also has the ability during your opponent's main phase, if this card is in your hand, you can banish a Monarch spell or trap card from your graveyard, and immediately this effect resolves, you actually get to tribute summon this card, and it's a quick effect, which is really insane. We then play 2 copies of Vanity's Fiend. Vanity's Fiend is a definite 2-of in this deck because this card basically makes it so neither player can special summon monsters, and we're just tribute summoning monsters with this deck. So this card essentially locks down the opponent. The only downside of this card is it does have 1200 defense points, so it doesn't work with a lot of our Monarch spells or traps, which is a little bit of a downside. But this card is still great to play as a 2-of in this deck. We then play a single copy of Majesty's Fiend, which does have 1000 defense, and this card is absolutely crazy because it cannot be special summon and monster effects cannot be activated, essentially locking down your opponent, which is just absolutely crazy. Once you put this card on your side of the field, we're totally fine. We don't need any more monster effects. You're at the base minimum. You have all the plays that you need with this card, and you have pretty much the game. We then play a single copy of Karaz, the Light Monarch. This card is great in the deck as a 1-of and has a really good effect that when this card is normal or special summon, you can actually target up to 2 cards on the field and destroy those targets, and if you do, each player draws a card for each card destroyed by this effect, which is a great effect to be able to use that they control. So for example, if we pop 2 of our cards, we actually get to draw 2 cards, but if we pop 2 of our opponent's cards, then they get to draw 2 cards, which is really good to be able to draw cards in the deck. This card also is really, this card cannot attack during the turn it is normal or special summon, but that's totally fine because we're actually going to get to draw cards off this effect usually. We then play 3 copies of Ida, the Heavenly Squire. This card is really good to play as a 3-of in the deck because this is what you're usually using to tribute summon out your monsters, and this card is great because if this card is normal or special summon, you actually get to special summon out 1 monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from your deck and defense position except another copy of this card. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is again not that big of a deal. We don't need an extra deck in this deck at all, so this card is definitely a 3-of in the build. And this card is sent to the graveyard, you can actually target 1 of your banished Monarch spells or traps and add it back to your hand, which is great to grab cards like Pantheism back to your hand. We then play 2 copies of the Underworld Squire. This card is what you summon off your copy of your Heavenly Squire, and this card is great because it actually gives you an additional normal summoner set during your turn for a tribute summon, which is great to be able to use off this card. You can also banish this card from your graveyard and then target 1 of your monsters with 800 attack and 1000 defense in the grave except another copy of this card and special summon in defense position to your side of the field. We then play 3 copies of the Pendulum Upstart Goblin Monster. This card is great in the deck because it has the ability, the scale effect. You have no cards in your extra deck, which we never will, except another copy of this card. You can destroy this card and then draw a card. It can actually get itself out of your extra deck, which is really neat because it cannot be normal summoner set. It must be special summon from your extra deck face up by having no other cards in your extra deck except another copy of this card, and you can only special summon this card once per turn. And if this card in the monster zone leaves the field, you banish it, so it doesn't even go back to the extra deck, it actually just banishes itself from play, so you don't even have a card in your extra deck, so a bunch of your cards get turned back on. This card is really good as a 3 of the deck, and you're never going to have a card in your extra monster zone except this card. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start off with a single copy of Terraforming. Terraforming is a definite one of the deck because it's going to help you get to your powerful field spell domain of the true monarchs. We then play a single copy of Rhoda. Rhoda's really good because it can actually search out the Heavenly Squire, which is really good in this particular deck. Speaking of the Heavenly Squire, we also play a single copy of 1-for-1 that can special summon it from the deck because it is a level 1 monster. And we play a bunch of monsters that are going to get stuck in our hand because we're playing a bunch of tribute summons. So it's very good to be able to put this card on our side of the field so we can tribute summon out a monster, which is just really nice. You're essentially playing like 5 copies of it in the deck, which is just really cool. We then play a single copy of March of the Monarchs. March of the Monarchs is great in this deck because tribute summon monsters you control cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, which is just really good. One copy of Return of the Monarchs. Return of the Monarchs is insane in this deck. This card is so powerful, and it actually searches monsters when you tribute summon monarch monsters, which is really good because it has the ability that you cannot special summon a monster in the extract, and when you tribute summon a monster, you can activate one of these effects. To add from your deck to your hand one monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense with a different name from the tributed monster, or add from your deck to your hand a 2800 attack point monster with 1000 defense with a different name from the tributed monster, which pretty much lets you search out a big monarch or a little monarch, which is really cool. I love that about this card. It was just really, really good. And the tribute summon monster must be faceable in the field to activate and resolve this effect. We then play 3 extremely spicy tech cards in the deck, and that's going to be 3 copies of Time-Tearing Morganite. This card is insane in the deck. This card is the first thing I thought of when I read this card was Monarchs, and this card is absolutely crazy. It has the ability that for the rest of the duel, you apply these 3 effects. You cannot activate monster effects in the hand. We don't play hand traps. We don't need those anyways. You draw 2 cards instead of 1 for your normal draw during your draw phase. So you actually get a pot of greed every single draw phase, which is really cool. And you can also conduct 2 normal summons or sets per turn instead of 1, which is really good to be able to get additional normal summons in this deck because we're not really special summoning all that much. This card is absolutely insane and a definite 3 of in the build, and it also has the ability that you can banish this card from the graveyard and then discard a Time-Tearing Morganite, and your opponent cannot activate monster effects when you normal summon this turn, so it actually makes up for only having a once per duel effect. You can actually just get rid of it to protect your normal summons, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of Pantheism of the Monarchs, one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck. You send a Monarch spell or trap from your hand to the graveyard and then draw 2. You can also banish this card from your graveyard and then reveal 3 Monarch spells and traps in your deck. Your opponent chooses one of them to add to your hand, and you shuffle the rest back in the deck. You're always going to get what you want because you can reveal Tenacity off this card's effect, and then the card that you actually want, and if they pick Tenacity, then you just get to search the card that you want. So you're always going to get what you want off this card. We then play 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarchs. Tenacity is great. You reveal a monster in your hand with 2400 attack and 1000 defense, or 2800 attack and 1000 defense, and add a Monarch spell or trap from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. We then play 3 copies of the Monarch Stormforth. This turns all of your Monarch cards into kaijus that you get to keep. You can actually tribute your opponent's monsters to be able to summon out a Monarch, which is really good, but you can only tribute 1, but that's not that big of a deal because it's very easy just to tribute an opponent's monster to deal with a big boss monster that they're playing on their field, and then summon out a Monarch monster to your side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Domain of the True Monarch. This card is the absolutely craziest field spell in the entire game, still to this day. This card is in like top 5 best field spells ever created. This card has the ability that while you have no cards in your extract and you're the only player who controls a tribute summon monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extract. We play really big monsters in this deck. So you're playing against any opponent that's playing a extra deck heavy deck. This card can essentially lock them entirely down. This card is really, really good. And if you tribute summon a monster that you control attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack during damage calculation calculation only. And once per turn, you can reduce one monster with 2800 attack and 1000 defense in your hand's level by 2 until the end of the turn, making it so that your copies of your big monarchs can be tribute summoned for 1 tribute, which is really insane. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 2 traps in the deck, and that's going to be a single copy of the Monarch's Erupt. The Monarch's Erupt is really good in this deck as one, because this card is essentially like a skill drain, which is just really good. It has the ability to activate this card only if you have no cards in your extract, and you control a tribute summon monster. You negate the effects of all face-up monsters on the field, while those monsters are face-up on the field, except tribute summoned monsters. And during your end phase, if you control no tribute summoned monster, send this card to the raid. This card is absolutely nuts. This card is skill drain for our opponent only. It's a one-sided skill drain that's searchable off of multiple cards in this deck, and it's really, really good. We then play a single copy of the Prime Monarch. You only really need a single copy of this card in the deck because it's so easy to get into the graveyard. It can actually special summon itself back as a trap monster by banishing a Monarch spell or trap from your graveyard, and then you're always going to just tribute it on your side of the field to be able to summon out a Monarch card. It has a really good effect if you do actually add it to your hand, because you can once per turn target 2 Monarch spells or traps in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then draw a card, but you're rarely ever using that effect. You're usually just using this card as a trap monster. So that's it for the deck, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck. It's super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Monarchs before, oh wait, let's get into the extra deck. There it is. So if you guys have never played Monarchs, guys, you definitely should give this deck a try, because this deck is super fun to be able to play. It's very budget to be able to play, which is really cool. If I was recommending a deck for somebody who's just getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, I would highly recommend Monarchs, because it doesn't play an extra deck. It doesn't have all that funny business in the extra deck, which is really cool, and it's very easy to be able to grasp with this deck, and it's really fun. It's very, very consistent now with time-rending Morganite, giving you additional normal summons, giving you additional draws, and just really, really good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy. This deck is really fun to be able to play, so definitely give it a try. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.